Located off the northwestern coast of Scotland, the Hebrides Islands rise as a desolate landscape in the middle of the immense sea. The islands are constantly pounded by fierce Atlantic winds, with storms that can reach force 10 on the Beaufort scale. Surviving in this unforgiving landscape, where no trees grow and resources are scarce, forced the inhabitants to devise methods of getting by. Their response was to construct blackhouses, resilient fortresses capable of enduring the harshest conditions. With no local timber available, the roof of a blackhouse became a complex puzzle assembled from materials sourced from around the world via shipping. The main source of materials for the roof structure relied solely on what the sea provided. The Atlantic Ocean functioned like a 3,000-mile-long conveyor belt. It transported pine and spruce from North American forests via the Gulf Stream, or brought in the broken remnants of merchant shipwrecks. The locals created a meticulous sorting and repurposing system for every piece of timber that washed ashore. Thick floorboards from shipwrecks or long oars were first choice for the main load-bearing rafters due to their superior strength. Even smaller, irregular scraps or broken farm implements were not discarded. They found new use as dowels or secondary supports. Besides being readily available for construction, this driftwood offers a concealed chemical benefit. Timber that has soaked in salt water for months undergoes a natural pressure treatment. The salt content renders the wood naturally immune to fungi, termites, and decay, especially in a region where humidity exceeds 80% year-round. This brined wood is a high-performance material that surpasses the longevity of any newly cut timber. Whereas the roof materials were gathered from the sea, the walls were extracted from the ground. To minimize transport effort, stone was sourced from countless small, local, open-pit quarries. Yet the engineering innovation behind the Blackhouse is the dry stone method, placing stones together without any mortar. This design is intentional. Using large, flat slabs for the outer layer maximizes the surface contact and friction between the stones. This lends the wall a quality known as ductility, a certain level of flexibility. Upon impact from a North Atlantic hurricane, the wall, unlike rigid concrete which would crack, instead vibrates and shifts, thereby absorbing the wind's kinetic energy. Mortar was applied only sparingly around door frames and vulnerable gaps to block drafts. This system without mortar allows the house to breathe, letting internal moisture filter through the stones and exit, thus stopping the interior from turning into a damp, deadly cold box. The Blackhouse has been engineered to function like a thermal fortress. It harnesses the laws of physics to counteract the brute force of a force 10 Atlantic storm through a combination of heavy mass and intelligent geometry. The Scots transformed a collection of stones into a high-performance defense system against the frigid wind. The main defensive element of the Blackhouse is its imposing wall structure. These walls are remarkably thick, ranging from 1.5 to 2 meters at the base and tapering upwards, a technique termed battering. This gradual taper keeps the center of gravity low and stable. The wall does not consist of a single solid mass. It is composed of two parallel stone layers, an inner skin and an outer skin. The space separating these two layers is called the intramural space. This cavity is filled with a blend of readily available organic and inorganic materials, such as peat, mud, moss, and domestic refuse. This core functions as both a potent insulation blanket and a waterproof barrier. When a storm forces rain into the outer stone shell, the peat and mud core soaks up the moisture. It behaves like a sponge, stopping water from penetrating into the internal living area. To aid this process, the stones in both layers are angled slightly outward. This ensures that any water that manages to get through is drawn by gravity away from the inside. In addition to waterproofing, the wall depends on thermal mass. In winter, the thick stone and peat core absorb the warmth produced by the central hearth and the livestock. Throughout the night, this warmth is gradually emitted back into the house. A stable microclimate is produced here, with far smaller temperature fluctuations compared to modern homes made of thin brick or stone. To address wind lift, the Scots employed a hip roof design that slopes on all four sides and includes rounded corners. This configuration enables hurricane-strength winds to glide smoothly over the building rather than hitting a flat surface. The key engineering secret, which significantly reduces drag and lift that might rip off a roof, is the tabta technique. Rather than placing the roof frame on the outer edge of the wall, it is set back onto the inner stone shell, forming a wide flat ledge on top of the wall known as a tabta. This ledge functions as a pressure trap. It captures wind coming up the wall's side and compels the airflow to leap over the roof. In this way, the eaves, the most vulnerable part of any thatched structure, are shielded from being lifted by the wind. Furthermore, by rounding the wall corners, the builders remove the air vortices that typically occur behind sharp corners, thus stopping the wind from pulling the stones apart. An intricate network of ropes, known as suganion, and usually braided from heather or straw, secures the thatched roof. The primary ropes, called mather shomen, run horizontally across the roof roughly every 75 centimeters, serving as anchor points for the diagonal ropes referred to as firagon. Rather than employing rigid iron nails that would break under storm stress, the Scots harnessed gravity. Large stones are attached to the rope ends and left to hang freely around the wall's edge, forming a dynamic tethering system. Since the weights are not secured, the roof can vibrate and move in rhythm with the wind. The heavy stones continuously pull the thatch downward, guaranteeing that even during a violent storm, the roof stays a flexible, moving shield instead of a brittle structure that would shatter. Survival within the Scottish Blackhouse is a collaborative endeavor, and its long, narrow interior serves as more than just a home. It functions as a high-performance thermal system, where people and livestock regulate heat energy within a tightly closed symbiotic cycle. In a setting where fuel is scarce and Atlantic winds are deadly, every watt of energy is measured and reused. The initial heating layer comes from biological Highland cattle, which are kept at the lower end of the building, called the thatched. This section is constructed on a gentle slope, enabling waste to flow away through specially designed floor channels. Nevertheless, the cattle's main function in winter is their metabolic heat production. Each adult cow functions like a natural radiator, giving off about 100 watts of heat energy. In a standard black house with a herd of 5 to 10 cows, the combined heat they produce is enormous. This living reactor can keep the indoor temperature 5 to 10 degrees Celsius above the outdoor temperature. Even in the absence of a fire, the warm air naturally ascends and flows via convection into the human living quarters, following the laws of physics. Thanks to the AIG antennae and this symbiotic arrangement, both people and livestock endure the frigid Hebridean winters, using very little external fuel. At the core of the house's heat strategy lies the kagat, a peat fire pit placed directly on the floor. What immediately catches a modern eye about a traditional black house is its complete lack of a chimney. Far from being a primitive mistake, this is an advanced design decision aimed at maximizing heat retention. In contemporary homes with chimneys, the stack effect can cause up to half of the heat to be lost. This phenomenon draws warm air outside, which then pulls cold air into the house through any available crack. The Scots avoided this heat loss entirely by removing the chimney. Instead, the hot smoke rises and collects beneath the roof, forming a cushion of warm air that occupies the upper part of the dwelling. The smoke then gradually and naturally filters through the permeable thatched roof. This setup guarantees that as much heat radiation as possible stays inside the living area while reducing the entry of icy Atlantic air. Although residing in a smoky atmosphere might appear unpleasant, the smoke is essential for both the home's durability and the family's economy. Peat smoke carries natural phenols and formaldehyde that serve as potent disinfectants. As the smoke penetrates the building, it destroys wood-boring insects and stops the thatch from rotting. This is crucial in a region where humidity reaches 80%. The top beams of the black house act as an enormous, round-the-clock smokehouse. Meat, fish, and cheese are suspended high in the rising smoke, keeping food preserved all year long without any refrigeration. At last, the cycle of smoke comes full circle across the fields. Annually, usually in June, the aged thatch, now heavily laden with soot and nitrogen-rich compounds from the smoke, gets taken away. This substance turns into a premium, nutrient-dense fertilizer for the island's barren grain fields. Afterward, the roof is recovered with new straw from the last harvest, forming an ideal closed-loop material cycle. This system sustains both the household and the terrain. Enduring the chilly, wet Hebrides, demands more than simply a stone structure. Specialized methods in textile engineering and food conservation are needed to make the most of limited resources. Within the Blackhouse, the living area becomes a highly efficient industrial workshop and a center for biological storage. Making harshest tweed is an expert lesson in the chemistry of survival. The last and most vital step in the procedure is known as walking. This is a hands-on mechanical process meant to shrink and bulk up the wool, converting it into a thick, wind-resistant, and watertight protective layer. This method depends on survival chemistry, utilizing mature aged urine, maester. The Scots employed the natural ammonia present in maester to remove surplus sheep fat from the wool. Additionally, the ammonia served as a strong mordant for the dyes. In the walking procedure, teams of women would pound the fabric in a rhythmic motion against a wooden table, keeping time with a rain louis. This guaranteed even thickening of the cloth, transforming the Blackhouse into an essential manufacturing plant. The hues of the tweed came straight from the Hebrides chemical environment, needing no artificial mordants. For their enduring vibrancy, Crotal, a lichen scraped off sea rocks, drenched in salt spray, was harvested to create a rich, reddish-brown color. Meanwhile, local heather was used to produce a deep forest green, and these natural shades were enhanced with wild iris. Roots were reduced to different grays and charcoal tones, carefully gathered from the main peat fire, in order to achieve the unique bog-brown hue typical of the Atlantic marshlands. All phases from carding and spinning through to the final chemical rinse occurred next to the main peat fire. This made the Blackhouse the island's economic hub. In an environment with acidic soil and weak sunlight, fresh vegetables and fibrous materials are scarce. To endure the winter, the Scots depended on a protein-rich diet consisting of oats, fish, and meat, all aided by smoke preservation techniques. The most important protein supply came from the guga, the juvenile gannet bird harvested annually. Expert hunting crews from Ness journeyed to the isolated rocky island of Sula Skier to collect these birds. The guga were promptly salted and kept in a strong brine, then moved to the Blackhouse's rafters for cold smoking. The rafters served as a round-the-clock industrial smoking chamber. Fish and meat were suspended directly above the smoldering peat fire to take advantage of the steady smoke circulation. This cold smoking method was kept within a strict temperature window of 20 to 28 degrees Celsius for about 20 hours. This exact temperature interval allows smoke particles to infiltrate the meat, stopping bacterial development without fully cooking the tissue. As a result, the food stays preserved for a full year, without requiring contemporary refrigeration. The Blackhouse represents more than just a physical dwelling. It functions as a spiritual blueprint, intended to shield its residents from the Atlantic's supernatural powers. In a realm where the ocean can claim everything, the Scots devised a set of rites to protect the home's spirit. The most essential ceremony is smorod antenna, the nightly fire-smearing practice. The household's woman conducts a meticulous arrangement of the coals. She shapes the glowing peat into a circle and splits it into 3 separate parts. These segments symbolize the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the land's ancient protective spirits. The fire is then deliberately buried under a thick blanket of ash, so it smolders through the night until morning. As a result, the spirit of the household never goes out, preserving an unbroken chain of warmth and life across generations.